The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are back. Or are they gone? Are they back again? No, they're gone again. It's a franchise with ups and downs. You can't ever tell if it's popular, not popular. Do the kids love it? Do they not? But now it's been taken, well, hijacked again. Once it was by Michael Bay. Now it's by Seth Rogen. Why can't we just get the kind of turtles that work? Why can't these companies stop ruining franchises and give us the very simple thing we want and need so that we can give them our eyeballs and our money? And folks, we are back with another exciting video today explaining entertainment, keeping you ahead of the culture curve. Today we're talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. If you like content like this, click the like button, share, subscribe, and stick it to the algorithms. Click it, the notification bell. Tom Connors of Midnight's Edge After Dark and Midnight's Edge and Midnight's Edge in the Morning. How many Midnight Edges are there? Well, he's here with us today, and we're going to be talking about those Ninja Turtles. Tom, let's start with an article from My Nintendo News. This saying that the TMNT Shredder's Revenge DLC has been revealed. This, a year after this little game came out, which is an arcade up in the style of the original arcade machine. And this is also in the style of the original 80s cartoon. Let me read this very quickly. Tribute Games has announced that we will be getting DLC for their excellent Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, which will include new playable characters, new turtle colors, and a new game mode which allows you to explore dimensions in an upcoming new game mode. There's no firm release date for the Dimension Shell Shock DLC, but it will be released later this year. It goes on to tell us what we can expect from it. There's the trailer. We won't play that. But this is clearly not something they had planned to do. Otherwise, we would not be waiting this long before they announced DLC. I think that they were shocked by just how much people love this game. Did you have a chance to play it? Tom, did you have a chance to play the game?
Sorry, I thought I was unmuted. Yeah, sorry. It's a lot of fun. It's a callback to the classic TMNT arcade games of the 90s and late 80s, I guess. And it was a lot of fun. It wasn't anything groundbreaking or anything like that, but no. I saw it was popular, and I'm not surprised in the least, because there's a certain era of turtles that are the most popular, as we'll discuss
I
here.
think the studio, the publisher, the distributor, all of them, I think they're shocked because we're getting DLC a year later. That clearly means they think that this thing is big enough that it can sustain DLC in what was probably originally thought to be a very small kind of niche game. Now they're putting out DLC a year later. I think this outdid their expectations. And part of what I'm interested in, Tom, is that I can't understand for the life of me why these studios don't go back to the turtles that worked. What is it about Paramount? What is it about these companies that they just can't stop fiddling with this and give us what we would like to have?
I wish I knew the answer to that, because Turtles has been a franchise that, long before the woke times, was a franchise that has had nothing but mostly dark times, all the way stretching back to the Next Mutation, and in some people's eyes, TMNT 3. But there was some highlights in the early 2000s. But again, the most successful Turtles tend to be the ones that gravitate more towards the roots of where they come from, whether it be the comic book, the 80s cartoon, or the 1990s films. Those three versions seem to be the versions that people gravitate toward the most. And then you have like the early 2000 series that has a nice solid fan base. And then there was a late 2000 series, like 2012, I think it came out or whatever, right after Nickelodeon bought the franchise. And that's kind of where things went completely off the rails. But before, I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword of sorts. So we can get into that eventually. Yeah.
So after that one, Tom, so the 2012 series, I thought that was fine. I was very skeptical when it came out.
It was definitely aimed towards little kids. Yeah.
Yes, but I thought they did a respectable job with what they were trying to do. And then they came out with a series after that. Maybe I have my years mixed up. They came out with a series after that where they completely changed the aesthetics of the turtles, and they aimed it at a very young crowd, and it looked and apparently performed terribly. Do you remember that one?
Yes, I do, and that would be Rise of the TMNT, and, to my understanding, they actually ended the very popular series that was still running, the CGI animated
Yes.
2012s or whatever one that would we were just discussing, and, yeah, this one was more the aesthetic of the film, a bit more into the comedy, slapdash, Nickelodeon style, I guess, is for lack of a better way of putting it.
Okay.
Uh,
And so, Tom, let's take a look at this now. This article out of CBR.com that talks again about we're doing the same thing. They're going to give us a version of this franchise that literally nobody wants. And I'll explain how we know that in just a moment. But this says report new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles show in the works follows Mutant Mayhem. Of course, that's the movie coming out. Seth Rogen in charge of that. And that movie, I know nobody wants it because they put it out in August. And you don't put a movie out for kids in August unless you know that it is absolute a heap of just trash. Because otherwise, why in the world would you put a movie out as kids go back to school? There is no reason, and yet they are going to go with a series that will be based on a movie that they already know is complete and utter trash. We'll read the article, but here we go. A new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles show following the events of Mutant Mayhem is reportedly in the works, according to Cinelinx. A new TMNT animated series is in the works for Paramount Plus, with Seth Rogen on board as a producer. Maybe he'll be as good with this one as he was with the Santa Claus series, that was the lowest rated, I believe, series ever in the history of aggregated score sites. The series will reportedly follow the events of the upcoming animated film Mutant Mayhem, directed by Jeff Rowe and written by Rogen, Evan Goldberg, Dan Hernandez, and Benji Summit. This report has not been officially confirmed by Paramount or Viacom CBS. All right. I know that you probably are not a fan of this Seth Rogen movie coming out. Tell me why.
well, back in the day, I didn't hate him when he first come on the scene with things like 40-Year-Old Virgin and a few other movies. It was this thing though where he kind of just started being in everything, and then they started letting him create and write things. And when you get to like, uh, the Green Hornet, and I guess he worked on Preacher and a few other things, like that's when things start to go off the rails. And then the guy has just gone totally woke. I mean, not to mention just
Oh, yeah.
I mean, personally, and I know a lot of people agree that he's just annoying. He has the
Yep.
stoner laugh and everything. He doesn't really do voices. He's just himself, right? I mean,
I
and
thought he was by
frankly,
far the weakest part of the Mario movie, and I have no idea why he
yeah,
was cast as Donkey Kong. He was so out
yeah.
of place compared to everybody else who you could tell they were actually trying their best.
In fact, I don't even understand why they just didn't have Jack Black do Donkey Kong.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm with
Somebody
you.
else maybe do or both, because he could. Bowser's almost in a. You. It took me a bit while watching the Mario movie. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Jack Black is doing that voice. I really didn't remember it until he started singing the Peaches song. I'm like, oh yeah, duh. Because he's so into it.
Yeah.
Rogan never does anything like that. And I
No.
mean, this is the guy who made friggin' Sausage Party. I mean, pardon my French, but still, it's like,
No,
I
I hated
mean,
that movie.
in
I
that
really, really
movie,
hated that movie.
I mean, it works best as maybe like an SNL skit or something like that. But once you get past the trailer, the joke is done. The joke is
Well,
over,
my
right? So
problem with
when
that movie was that it was essentially a vehicle for, like, atheist propaganda and, have at it, whatever your beliefs might be, that's fine, but, I felt like that was a heavy R-rated CGI film aimed at teenagers and was sort of
yeah.
religiously propaganda, and I was like, "You know what? I didn't sign up for religious propaganda in this stupid film."
Well, even that aside, my point is like, okay, what's the joke here? The joke is you have what looks like a Pixar slash Disney kind of movie where foods are alive and they're talking, and after dark, things they come alive and they have adventures. The joke is, they get to swear, they find out that life is fleeting because they get ate. Like
Right, and then
it only works for about 5 minutes,
the
right?
third
At
act
best,
is sort of like a hedonistic, propaganda piece where you
right?
sit there and you think, "Did Sam Harris write this third act? Like, who is"
But
what? This thing's shifted hard.
I mean, I'm not going to say that he can't be funny, but my point is that that joke was beat to death afterwards. And as you said before, the Santa Claus Inc. thing was not well
Oh, yeah.
received.
Oh, well, the worst received piece of entertainment in the past 10 years, let's say. But what is it? Okay, so we know the Turtles, that this new trailer and everything, they've
Yeah,
changed. They've race swapped April. They've made her be frumpy and
pretty much Liz
large.
O'Neill, yeah, or Liz
Yeah, and all
O'Neill or
that.
whatever,
So,
yeah.
Tom, here's my thing. And I don't, I do understand it with Disney because I study it all the time. I study Disney quite a bit so that I can explain it. But I don't understand with the Turtles why Paramount doesn't just do the thing that would make them money. That it boggles my mind. And I guess what I want to know from you is compared with this, how much money would Paramount make if they could produce a film, go back to the animatronic suits, okay? I don't know who makes them. I don't know how you could make them today. I don't know if Jim Henson Studios would even be willing to do that, the Creature Shop, if they can. But
Actually, I'm sure Brian Henson would love to. He was a big part of the original films, so yeah.
okay, so why don't they? Because that original one, okay, set aside the second and the third, which were altered because at the time they were protecting kids, allegedly, right? They wanted to not have them use weapons, didn't want it to be dark. But that original film, I'll put that up against almost any superhero film in terms of just the quality. And who could have ever seen that coming at the time from the Turtles? But honestly, it's a fantastic movie. Why don't they go back to that? It's been 30 plus years. Why can't we go back to that?
I wish I knew the answer. Again, I agree with you that excuse me, that 1990 film really captured both the comics and the cartoon and what made them popular and managed to be lightning in a bottle. And like you said, from then on, part 2 has its fans, but from then
It's
on
okay.
there's really no and that's the thing is I gripe about some other things. It's like there's a lot more worse. There's a lot more bad in this franchise than there is good, unfortunately, at this point. And once you get to the Bay Turtles, that's really when they clearly just did not understand what they had. Nickelodeon is part of the problem, or Paramount is part of the problem, as you pointed out. They are the same way with Star Trek and several other things. They just don't quite get it. And once they do get it, they fumble it at the end of the day anyway. Now, I can see on paper and in certain ways, like, they go, okay, Seth Rogen's popular with the kids. He's right in the right age group to where he was a kid when this first movie, the movies and the TV show and all that stuff hit. I can't guarantee he's a fan. Sure, he's in the right age group, but again, you're bringing up a point. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be a fan, no, but you still need somebody who can understand the aesthetics and what makes Ninja Turtles Ninja Turtles. And frankly, everything that they've come up with that they're coming out, in this film is stuff that we've all seen before. It's really going to take it back to a very kiddish place, which I wouldn't care if this was just an also ran and we had another, like you said, major motion picture in the works, which we technically do, but that's been like seemingly in development hell because we haven't heard any movement on it. And Colin Yost, I believe, is the one working on that. So again, another comedian.
Right.
Why? That's the biggest thing because to go into a little history, what made the first movie work was they had a script going into it. And the original idea was, oh, we can just put a bunch of these, stunt guys from Golden Harvest films, from all the, the Bruce Lee and all that kind of kung fu films. We can just put a couple of those guys in a costume, and we'll film it. And that's when we got a Ninja Turtle movie. They didn't realize how complicated it was going to be at the end of the day, but that didn't matter. Then and only then was, because of the director Steve Barron. He took one look at that original script and he's like, this is crap. And he threw it away and he started ripping pages out of the comic book itself, the first 5 issues from the Eastman and Laird run of Mirage actual first comics. And he's
Sure.
started throwing them at one of the writers there that he was working with. I can't remember who it was now, but he's like, here, this goes in the movie, this goes in the movie, this goes in the movie, this goes in the movie. And if you read those first 5 comics, all that stuff that's in the movie is right out of the comics.
Yeah, and
Like, I
some of that
mean,
stuff, Leo meditating on the farm, Raphael getting into the fight with all of the foot
well,
soldiers.
it's a little flip flop. Like in the comics, it was Leo that actually got hurt, and there's things like that. But they go to the farm, like you said, and all that stuff. With the fire and the fight with the Foot Clan, and all that stuff is straight out of the comics. All of it.
And
With Casey
what
Jones
makes
with
it
Raphael is out of the comics. All that, yeah.
what elevates it though is that they took the time to build those characters in a way that you don't see in many movies today. That you actually get a pause, you get to breathe, and then you care about these characters because it's not just nonstop slapstick goofiness, interspersed with silly fights where there's no actual drama. I mean, in the movie, you don't know what's going to happen. There are multiple times where you actually believe that one of the turtles could be killed or seriously hurt because of the tone that the movie
Well, I
presented.
actually thought Splinter was dead for the first act until
Sure.
because this is one of those rare occasions where back then they used to pump out all the movie stuff ahead of time, but there was a sense of they weren't sure how this movie was going to do, so you didn't get a lot of pre-movie material. After the movie is a different story. But back then, you used to get the novelizations, the comic books, everything. I had very little knowledge going into this movie, which was a rarity because they didn't have all that stuff out. All I had was a few random pictures that were on the cereal box and an advertisement from a comic book to go by, and the really gritty looking trailer that was at the end of all the animated VHS tapes for a while there. That's all I had to go by going into this movie on opening day, and I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. I thought they killed Splinter because
Yeah.
they make it kind of ambiguous for a few minutes there until you realize, oh, he's been kidnapped. Because I was like, wait a minute, because the way Raph reacted and it was real shaky and dark. I
Sure.
couldn't see what was going on. And I mean, this movie already for the first 20 minutes or whatever had already kind of prepared me for this. It was a bit of a shock. The first thing you do is hear the first line from a Ninja Turtle is damn.
Right, telling you what kind of film they're ready to make. And then they
Exactly.
decided to make it they went completely juvenile afterwards. But, walk us through, Tom, what was it that killed the animatronic efforts? Why did they put that completely aside at some point? Now, let me say this too. I know that they did like a Power Ranger style show with very cheap animatronics. That doesn't count. That was utter crap.
Well,
So,
oddly enough, that was spawned from the fourth film because the third film did well enough that they were going to continue the franchise, but it just got shuffled around. And then whatever plans they had for the fourth film got reworked into the next mutation. And the next mutation was when Saban had picked
right,
up
and
the
it's
rights for
crap.
New Line. And it's crap. It's utter crap. But no, like after the second film, which you can argue in some ways, the second film both has some better effects in the animatronics, and then they also softened the turtles' features in the
Yes.
second film, so it's kind of a balance there. And this was another a victim of the time where like Ghostbusters 2 and the real Ghostbusters cartoon got vandalized by these parent groups. Ninja Turtles got attacked endlessly by parents groups for the same reasons you just said in the beginning of this program, and for the darkness factor as well, not just the violence but the darkness and the serious tone. So that's definitely where things went to a more comedic tone in the second film and lighter tone. And then by the time you get to the third film, they were spending a lot less money. They couldn't afford the Henson group, so they actually brought in the Chiodo brothers, who are actually really good, but they didn't have enough money to work with, and they were spread thin because at this same time they were working on like Two Critters projects. They had just come off of, I believe, Ernest Scared Stupid and stuff like that, so they were really busy getting pulled in several different directions. So the Turtles were like an afterthought kind of thing for them, I guess, and it was like a last minute deal or something like that. And I think even one of the brothers, it was Edward or something like that, he even said, in hindsight, we wish we'd have had more time to actually do a better job because it's our names on there and we didn't actually really do any of that work, it sounds like, from what he was saying in so many words. So they were delegating a lot of stuff, it sounds like. And again, those effects in that third film are horrendous. And that's kind of where things went off the rails right there, because you start to see those kind of echoes into that series you just mentioned, up to the point where they decided to go back to animation with the 2007 animated CGI film, which is actually well regarded among fans. That's one of the
Sure.
highlights. But then again, the 2012 series and stuff like that that came out soon afterwards was also well regarded for the most part. Like me, fans like me, it was mostly harmless. I didn't care about it. It was for kids. But the Bay films are what's the next thing that came up
And
on
they're
the
they're atrocious to me. I mean, they're nauseating. I despise the Bay films.
really and it's sad that I can't understand what happened with that second film because it really felt like they went into it with the right intentions. Um,
I think
that movie made
remind
me
me
madder than the first one, actually.
remind me, but I think that they had a different idea of what they wanted to do. They wanted to make them aliens from outer space. Then that leaked out into the fandom. The fandom reacted strongly, negatively, and then I think that Bay and whoever he had brought in, they tried to massage that into something more traditional. But at the same time, the turtles' design was so different that I think that it was off-putting to fans. And then the other thing that I think happened was that the first film came out and did quite well financially,
It did all
but
right.
was so poorly received. And then the second one, that first weekend just killed it because people were willing to go back and say, let's see if it's any better. And then when it wasn't, like that
Well,
was it. It
and
just fell off a cliff.
this is one of those things. Okay, as far as like, let me address two things here. First, the alien thing. Deep lore fans will know if from like a layman standpoint or a out of context standpoint, if they meant actually having them come from outer space themselves, that is dumb. But after doing research after the fact, I think what they were getting at and what really sent them down the wrong path was they were initially going to set up the Utrom in the first movie. And what, for those who don't know what the Utrom is Krang is basically the amalgamation of what the Utrom were in the comics. There were creatures from outer space that were simulating humans, and the mutagen actually originated from them, is what they were kind of implying throughout. It depends on which various comic version you go by, which even in the original cartoon, it's implied that the mutagen that Shredder uses was created by Krang. So if you go by that respect, Planet X, outer space, what the hell's the difference? Who cares about that part? What we cared about was you got a group of turtles that don't even look like turtles, and granted, they wanted to go with this more realistic look for them. Like, okay, this is what real
Which
turtles would
does
look
not
like.
hold up any longer at
And it
all.
doesn't. In fact, that's what made me laugh when I saw the Guardians of the Galaxy recently, and a lot of people tagged me in that. Like, did you see the Ninja Turtles? Like, yeah, that was the problem. They literally showed you what a mutated turtle in humanoid form would look like. And guess what? It's not visually appealing.
Right.
But guess what is? What we're looking at on screen is technically more visual appealing than anything we've had out of the Turtles in the last few years. And I have my own personal problems with it that I'm not going to get into. But one thing I can't deny is this is probably one of the better designs that have come down the road in the last few years. Mainly just because I see a lot of the 1980s cartoon in here. I see some of the 1990s movie cartoon in here. But what I dislike is some of the modernisms that are creeping in here. The bandana completely over Raph's head. The glasses on Donnie, which has also been a modernism thing. Mikey, for some reason, has braces. Lord knows how he got those. Um,
Splinter also is into dental surgery and
yeah.
dental issues.
And I mean, Jackie Chan is Splinter. Okay, it's not bad, even though he's supposed to be Japanese, but we'll let that slide. You know, that's not the most uninspired thing about this. The rest of it, though, oh my God. You've got, first of all, Seth Rogen doing the voice of Bebop, which we all predicted. And that's a race swap right there. That's whitewashing. I can't believe nobody's saying anything about that because Bebop was initially a black character. Then you have this Superfly, which is it Baxter Stockman? Is it its own character? Doesn't matter. It's coming off like a bad stereotype. I mean, this movie looks like the same crap we got out of the '07 film. It's nothing new. And they're acting like they're bringing new shit to the table. Apologize for the language, but they're not. You're not discovering anything here. Christopher Columbus, because Leif Erikson already did it. And if you wanted to try something new, you should have paid attention. And this goes back to your main issue here, your in question you're saying, Pro, is they should have paid attention to how popular these games were.
Oh,
That
it's blowing their minds.
the only toys that are selling are the classic stuff and the movie stuff from 1990s. In fact, I was surprised we didn't get it. I thought that NECA was hinting on Turtle Day we were going to get an announcement for the Ninja Turtles 3 figures, and we didn't. I couldn't believe it. So I don't know what happened. They even teased it like they were going to. Um, this franchise has a heart in that era, so I can see where they're trying to dig back into this, and that's why you grab Seth Rogen because he's from that era. But I'm not sure he understands the franchise
So
because what
let's
makes
have some fun, Tom.
yeah.
So it was not too long ago we covered Super Mario Brothers, and we got a comment from one of the guys who was directing the sound on the movie, thanking us, and being very appreciative of the video. We're getting thousands of views and whatnot. Let's have some fun with this power for just a moment, whatever that power might be, and let's imagine, because I think what you and I are both saying is to whoever out there is watching who might have some influence on the Turtles franchise. Seriously, we want the animatronics. Give us a new movie that is in the tone of the first one. But what I want you to do, Tom, is if they were to go back to doing a film that it has that dark and yet sincere approach to the relationship between the turtles, it's realistic, it's gritty, it has the animatronics. What would you like to see in a story if we were to return to that? What should they do?
Well, I mean, here's another problem is you have very different groups of fans in the turtle fandom before I answer your question.
Can they be united?
I hope so, and the only thing that really unites us all is kind of the 1990 movie. Like, that's one of the few things that everybody can kinda get behind.
Okay, I'm even more convinced then. So what should be in this?
Because and yeah, and that's the thing, because even the Turtles fandom is the first time I ever really experienced that cognitive dissonance of, "We don't care what it is as long as it's got the Turtles' name on it," kinda thing.
Mhm.
Because we had a lot of fights about the 2014 film, about a lot of the classic series, plural, and other things that have come out of the Turtles. I mean, we don't even discuss the Coming Out of Our Shells tour.
Yeah,
That's
that's
just
probably
one
for
of
the
those
best
things.
now.
That's like the other end of it. We decided, okay, we all get behind the 90 film, but the one thing we don't talk about, much like the Christmas special, is the Turtles musical career. Like, that's the other thing we don't discuss.
Folks, go
Uh,
try out that playlist later a little later and
oh,
see how that goes. It's great
what's
for
sad
working
is
out.
that Coming Out of Our Shells actually got a digital remaster, and I believe you can still get it on Amazon. But anyway, point being is if I had control of this,
Did
you
Leo
gotta
play a guitar? Do I remember that correctly?
I think he played the was it the you might be right on that. I don't remember.
All right,
I don't
keep going,
remember
keep
who
going,
played
sorry.
what. No,
All
actually,
right,
he might
so
have been the
what
drummer,
are we
but
gonna put in this film? If that is what unites the fandom, what
I
goes in this
say you
movie?
try to
Do we have Krang? Do we do the Krang and Shredder team up? What do we do?
kinda, yeah, what I would do is you set up yourself with a trilogy because that way you can let the story breathe. The first story being an introduction to the Turtles. You have Shredder looming in the background as a shadow, not so much in the forefront. Baxter Stockman is your main bad guy, and maybe Rat King in the first film, because then you can set up, Baxter Stockman, who he is. You can have April working for him, like in the original comics. Mix a little bit of the tone of the original '80s cartoon in it, but otherwise just kind of stick close to that original comic book, but mix in, like I said, things from the cartoon and other eras that people will like, but keep it sincere. Don't play it wacky. Don't go into the gross out era, because that's kind of what this movie is doing
No
here.
fart jokes.
Exactly, that's what this movie I can see already is doing, is going into that. And you basically set up this idea that the Mousers are taking over the town, and you know Splinter being a rat, that
It's a
causes a problem
problem.
for him, especially with the Rat King also could control Splinter in a way. You could play with that a little bit, but yeah, you just kind of stick with the basics in the first film, keep it kind of grounded in that. You can introduce like little wacky fantasy elements with the Mousers and that, and kind of get the idea that this could go someplace. Then the second film is where you start bringing in more of the mutants. That's where you introduce Bebop and Rocksteady. That's where you introduce Shredder and Krang and the Foot Clan. And then the third film is the big culmination and ending of it all. Of course, by the second film, you have Baxter Stockman turn into the Fly and whatnot. And you just kind of basically do what they did with the first movie and the first season of the series, and some of the other elements a little shortly thereafter. And you just do that. I mean, that's kind of what the early 2000 series did in a way. So really kind of emulate a lot of that in a way too. And that's really the best parts about it, are when they're more grounded, but yet there's still a little bit of the fantasy element in it. And the issue is at hand is that there's so many different variants on the Turtles. You either have the wacky, goofy, outer space weirdness stuff, or you have the more grounded, realistic, violent side of it. And that's kind of the difference between the two makers, unfortunately, is as much as they are so eye to eye on certain things, and that these guys created, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, the area where they differ is one likes the more grounded, ninja stuff. The other one likes to take it in the more sci-fi, crazy, goofy, off the wall place.
Gotcha. Well, I think what we're saying here is that there's a way to unite the people who love this franchise, and we
Last
got to go
Ronin was
back to
another
the
thing too.
physical stuff.
And Last Ronin being kind of a conclusion of the initial Eastman and Laird run was very popular. That's another thing I think they should pay attention to is, like a Last Ronin miniseries on Netflix or something would also go over well. See, the Turtles is a franchise where you can do both adult and kid things at the same time. I think they can exist in the same universe.
Well,
So
and if
that's
they
where I
well,
wouldn't have a problem with this movie if I had something else coming. You know what I mean?
in the best movie, then you can get those together, right? So you can dabble in the dark, but you still have it where the kids can go see it. That's what the first film did. Kids could go
Yeah,
see it. It was on the edge. Maybe you were pushing it, bringing your 6-year-old, but
right.
at the same time, teens and young adults, they loved it. And so you had You were bringing all of that group, all the possible demographic possible, and everybody was on board with the turtles, and turtle fever took off. So
Yeah, no, you're not wrong there. I mean, if you can, in a perfect world, we could do that, but the 2014 and sequel really made me scratch my head because those are actually rated PG-13, and I'm trying to figure out why.
yeah,
Because
I would have to go
nothing
back.
in them.
I'm surely there's some
I'm like
weapon somewhere.
I'm like, you get a PG-13, and these are less dark than the original films. They're more fantasy oriented and off the wall crazy, like, as far as the stuff that's going on. Like, I don't understand how these are even rated PG-13. First one, I guess maybe because of the sexual innuendos, but I don't know. But you're right. Like, in a perfect world, we could come to that kind of place where you can meld the few turtles that really worked for everybody, and not go too wacky, but not keep it too dark and gritty, but at the same time, like you said, find a happy medium.
But I'll tell you this, Tom, and we'll wrap up here. But if they went with the animatronics, then that would definitely set it into a realistic tone. And then with the technology we have today, in some of the fight scenes, if those animatronics are your base, you can have CGI models based on those, and you can do things that you could not do in the original films that will make it fantastic. But you have to keep it where it doesn't go off the rails. But I
Yeah.
think this franchise could explode. I have no idea why the companies don't make these franchises explode by just listening to the fans and saying, you know what? You really like this, and we really like your money. So let's do it. Tom, where can people find you on this great, big, beautiful web out there?
Midnight's Edge After Dark, and wherever else I may roam.
Well, Tom, thank you for being here. It's a pleasure every time you're on. Folks, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and stick it to the algorithms. When you click it, we're talking about the notification bell. Drop a comment down below. Who's your favorite turtle? And what's your favorite turtle show/movie? We would love to know. There are no wrong answers, but if you say coming out of your shells, well, we will begin to question your judgment severely. All right, folks, wherever
Yeah.
you are, whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.